All right, well, I messed up the recording, so I paused it, but then instead of restarting it, I turned it off. So we're going to have this recording in a couple of different parts. Sorry about that.
No worries, Morgan. We're good. Are people coming back in from the groups?
Yes.
Okay.
Hold on, we've got 10 more seconds to get everybody back in.
I never see that quite. It looks like we're supposed to go back, and then I don't see the time.
Well, you should get a warning that it's a minute, and it'll automatically push you back in. So if you're still having your group discussion, you really don't have to choose to go back. It'll just send you back.
Oh,
okay, so I think we're all back now, and we're good to go.
Okay, we are. All right. So moving forward, I don't know if you guys can see this on my screen, but do you see how big my arrow is right now? I learned that at a PD session this week. You can actually make your arrow bigger, which is awesome for a screencast or even presenting on the screen in your room to have a bigger arrow. And that's in your accessibility in your settings. It's kind of cool. Okay, so moving on. So with chapter 4, you really talked a lot about just the issues with single letter grades, the traditional single letter grades, and how they're overly complicated, and there's inappropriate mathematics, that there are idiosyncratic teacher hacks that we all try to do that are unique to our own ideas, and that there's a variance and unreliability to these grades because of these factors that create frustrations for students. So we talked about letter grades, and I think we've talked about this in the past, that they can sometimes include a lot of things like content, knowledge, skills, behaviors, our subjectivity, and our bias. And a lot of teachers, we try to adjust that. Like we have good intentions. So we create these categories, and sometimes we weight these categories, like categories of homework, tests and projects, classwork, activities, and participation. But Feldman says this is a flawed lens when we include anything to do with behavior, because he says it's not just what the teacher observes, but how the teacher interprets what she observes. So for instance, a student, we might see a student not talking during group work. And so the question is, did the teacher look at the wrong time? Did the teacher just not see the student actually talk? But they did earlier. Is the students interrupting, and does the teacher take this as a sign of disrespect or disengagement? The student doodling during lecture, is this off task or focused? So he talks in this chapter a little bit about implicit bias, our assumptions and beliefs, and how these can color our interpretation of that person's action. He says that white teachers can misinterpret African-American students' behaviors incorrectly, believing them to be signs of disrespect or stemming from some evil intent, or judging it to be inappropriate because the teacher comes from a different cultural background in which that behavior is less familiar or accepted. He says that subjective awarding or subtracting for points on behavior, what that does is it stigmatizes students and it harms academic success. And he cites several researchers about that. He says, if we can't stop our implicit biases, can teachers, particularly those of us who are white teachers, limit the opportunities to perpetuate inequities through our racial biases? And the first step is self-awareness. And he doesn't go into that a lot, but we have to start to learn what our biases could be. And the second step he mentions is that we have to reconsider policies that invite bias to operate. And in particular, this book is about grading policies. So in our second breakout group, we're going to use this question that he had that has us sort of explore the possibility of bias. So thinking about your own staff, your own teachers, what confidence or uncertainty do you have that two teachers in your school would assign the same grade to a student, maybe two 9th grade English teachers or two 10th grade English teachers? And why is that? Why are you confident or uncertain? And then to think about with what biases might this be connected? So that's our second breakout group. We'll have 5 minutes, maybe Morgan, you could give it 6 and make sure people get their time to talk and to listen.
It'll be 5 minutes with a 1-minute warning, and you don't have to come back when you get the 1-minute warning, so you will have 6 minutes, okay?
Okay, let's do it.
The recording is back up and running.
Okay, so I'm assuming that means we're also all back into the large group.
We are.
All right, so moving on. Yeah, that was so interesting. So I just want to take this little distraction. When we're thinking about our biases, it's so important to do the work first for ourselves. And 2 books I want to recommend if you really want to look at your own biases about race, you know, especially with what's going on right now in the United States and across the world. So You Want to Talk About Race is a really powerful introspective book that has like questions to help you reflect on your own relationship with race. The second one that I have posted here is called Tell Me Who You Are, sharing our stories of race, culture, and identity. And this one is a collection of, I think it's like 100 different interviews with people across the US, that these 2 19-year-olds went across the US, Winona and Priya, and interviewed people to find out about their relationship with race and identity and culture. And these stories are such a great avenue. They're 1 to 2 pagers, super quick and easy for kids to read, and they can learn about others beyond our microcosm here in Maine. And I think it's so helpful. So other thing I want to mention, this just came up today. Heinemann Institute has 2 summer online PDs about racial equity and literacy, which helps you explore your own. The second one is Interrogating Your Internalized Racism. And the first one listed above is about systemic racism in society, schools, and classrooms. And I was able this morning when I saw it to get myself registered. It's $129. It was a $600 institute last year. And I got my assistant superintendent to give me 4 other slots for teachers, and I already have them filled from 8 o'clock this morning. It's going to be a really powerful opportunity. It's got 1 synchronous day, and the rest is all asynchronous for you to work through when it works for you in the summer. So I highly recommend get on that if you're interested. And I'll throw the link into the chat box during the next discussion. So the other thing he talks about is the omnibus grade, which is we have too much information in one small container. And as teachers, we try to be clear, and we try using weighting of categories or adjusting of point values to make it fair and clear to kids, but it turns out not to be as much, because this often can create inflated and deflated grades for kids. I saw that for myself with a student I had who was the lowest reader I ever had, but he had such great work ethic, and he had a one-on-one aid, so everything he turned in was typed and good. And so when I gave points for everything, timeliness, etc., he had a B. The truth is he needed extra support, and that my grading practice at the time hurt him because we had a harder time getting him into a support program that he needed with his low skills. So in the book, it has this example of Tangela and Isabel, and Tangela is a student at the top here. She had 74% for her grade, which included all these categories, and the teacher had weighted those categories. And this student is always on time, so she had a really good work ethic, but she was often incorrect with her work. So her grade was actually inflated by her work ethic, whereas Isabel was always late, but always correct, and her grade got deflated by her work ethic. And these 2 students both have a 74%, even though one knows the content better than the other. So what that does is it rewards compliance over competence. So Tangela's weaknesses, they were overshadowed by her work ethic, and she didn't get the support she needed, which is what happened with the student that I had. And Isabel learns that it's not about what you know, but what the teacher wants. And she becomes less engaged and less invested. So he also talks a little bit in the chapter about grade hacks, the things that we do as teachers to manipulate our grading programs. So I started teaching in the days of a grade book that you had to add up yourself with a calculator, and it was a lot of work. And now we have these cool systems that we just put points in and they do all the adding for us, and we can give it weights and it'll do it all for us. But we still figure out ways to manipulate that when the grade doesn't come out the way we think it should be, because we have more knowledge about the kids than the computer. So teachers do things like to retroactively change their scores. They drop low test scores, they select the average scores, they create extra credit opportunities. Some do, some don't. They curve up scores or bump up for effort and growth, or at the end of the term, like if you see a grade and you're like, there's no way that kid should have that grade, and you just straight up change it. So Feldman says the problem is that each teacher solves for weaknesses in our software and our dysfunctional omnibus grade design in unique ways, guided by individual beliefs about what motivates students and what aspects of a course are most important, different levels of technical know-how and comfort with the grading software, and diverse ideas about what students need to learn and how. So these constraints of our traditional grading system, plus our well-intentioned grading decisions, actually equal this grade variance and unreliability that affects our students. And the impact is, it makes it really difficult for students to navigate from one teacher to the next. It's a real challenge to keep track of how the grade system works for different teachers, and it's confusing. Students get misplaced in course levels up or down, and it ultimately creates distrust among colleagues at the same school. So that's going to lead us into this discussion question. We're going to give you 15 minutes in this space to be talking about the question. We're going to ask you to share and get some ideas and take notes, and get at least one person to post to the Padlet. Others are welcome to post, but get one person at least to take that role of posting the ideas from your group in the chat. It would be helpful if you one person opens the Padlet up and you can see what those options are. They're connected to this question. Are there teachers with reputations as hard or easy graders at your schools? We're going to be looking at that, and what specifically defines them as that. How does this categorization make you feel? How does it make the labeled easy or hard teachers feel? And how do students react to that? And most importantly, how does this impact grading and learning, and what does it suggest? I know it's another complex question, but you have 15 minutes, which is the longest time we've done. So that should be good to explore it a little bit and use the Padlet as a guide too. Ready, Morgan?
Okay, so here's the questions. Here they are posted. You have 15 minutes to talk. This time there's only going to be a 15-second warning before it shoots you back here. And you've been shuffled once again.
Morgan, you can extend that a little bit because we're actually doing it a long time. Give them a little time to process it, I think.
Okay, there we go. All right, here you go. Okay, we're back. All right, Patty, we're all back and ready to close this out. And I love what I'm seeing on the Padlet. That was great. Patty, you're muted.
Got it. Sorry about that. Oop. Well, I'm unmuted and lost on my own screen. Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry, folks. Yeah, super interesting conversation and information there. I would like us to, we have 9 minutes left. I think I'll do is kind of do my closing, and then if we have a little space for people that want to speak to anything that's on their mind at this point, we could do that until our hour is up. So just for our next question and moving forward, having people think about what impact it makes for kids being judged for every mistake, awarded points for their actions, and faced with complex and variable grading, the impact that has on student motivation. Read and reflect on Chapter 4 in the next webinar, which is next Tuesday. It'll be at 9 a.m. We'll do our chapters 5 and 6 preview. And
Patty, I'm gonna jump in for just a minute.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a blank white screen. You might have. I don't know if anybody else.
That looks good. Let me try again.
Mine's white as well.
Yeah, I think you might have selected the wrong screen to share. So I just want to put you. And
okay, still white.
I just want us to shoot for 9:55 because I have to open another session. Okay.
We'll just close then. You're right. I chose whiteboard. I could have done a smiley face. I didn't even know. Okay, so that was the screen. It wasn't really that exciting, but to have people read and reflect on Chapter 4, and then our next webinar will be Tuesday the 23rd at 9
I can see the screen now, but I can't hear you, Patty.
I got muted again. How about now? Can you hear me now? I'm not currently muted.
I can hear you. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry for whoever can't hear. The plan next week too, we will talk about what it will look like in July and how we will set that up. So sort of an overview of moving forward. Chapter 5 is a super short chapter, and then 6 is all about previewing the whole second half of the book, which is really where everyone wants to go, which is actual practical things you could try in your classroom to adjust your grading practices. So that's the plan. And
yeah, so that's why I just want to take a moment. That's why I want you to be thinking next week about, so it'll be an option to team up with some folks who've been doing this work and take a deeper dive with some support, but essentially on your own, and then report back later in the summer to give you some time to really go deep into how this gets done. So just start thinking about how you want to get into that. Thank you, Patty, for sharing the Heinemann information. That's great.
Oh yeah, please check that out. That thing is going to sign up fast, and it's really inexpensive. Just to close, I put this quote up. We won't have time to share out, but I found this by Einstein. Any intelligent fool can make things bigger and more complex, which is what we tend to do with our grading systems. It takes a touch of genius and a lot of courage to move in the opposite direction. So I commend all of you for taking the courage to look at and consider what could be done differently. And I hope you will take a little bit of time to look at the Padlet and see what other groups posted later. So thanks for coming in today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is wonderful. I'm thrilled, and I can't wait to share all of this with the commissioner as well. I'm sure she'll be thrilled.
We can still add things to the Padlet, correct?
Yes, it should still be open. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, and that's great because that'll become a resource, you know, once you move over to small teams with a deeper dive.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Whew.
Woo! Great
Thank
job.
you guys, but I'm exhausted.
Yes.
Last 2
Oh,
weeks,
yeah.
so much work.
One hour a week. It does take a lot of work, but good job.
No, we're still doing work at school. We're working full time still.
Yeah.
I don't know about others, but.
I'm going to end the recording.